Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down as we continue on our horror movie Tuesday journey. We transition from the trailer reaction world and slide into the movie review world, man. Time to dive into some movies that the Seaman has seen over the last month or so, and he's seen a bunch of horror movies. And we're going to start with easily my favorite of the batch. It's, I think, the best horror movie of the year. One of the best horror movies I've seen in the last few years. And it is, of course, the one I most recently seen, so it's the freshest in my memory. And this thing is just absolutely brilliant. I was blown away with how good this movie was. And the reason it's good is because of two people, pretty much, just two. There's more than two people in the movie, but there's one person in the movie that this movie is so successful for, and it's the person who's helming this movie that makes it so successful. And that's, of course, Leigh Whannell writing and directing, and his star, Elisabeth Moss, absolutely crushing, which is to be expected because Elisabeth Moss always crushes, man. This woman is tremendous. She's one of the best actors in the biz, and she brought her A game for this movie, and I'm real happy she did. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, man? Take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into the Invisible Man. That's right, man. We are diving back into Universal's Monsterverse. Now, this is not the interconnected dark universe that Universal was once hoping to launch. It kind of was supposed to originally start with Dracula Untold, which starred Luke Evans. Not a terrible movie, but flopped big at the box office. So they backed off. And they waited a few years, and then they started going, you know what? Instead of just putting a movie out, let's get a whole bunch of people. Let's lock people into these movies and then start producing them. And, you had Tom Cruise locked in for The Mummy. You had Johnny Depp locked in for The Invisible Man. You had Angelina Jolie locked in to be Bride of Frankenstein. And it looked like this was all going to happen. And then that Mummy movie came out, and it was not good. And Universal said, all right, we're out. We're done. We're not going to do it. But thank goodness they didn't just shut the door and lock up all of their monsters. They let Mr. Leigh Whannell come in and play around, and you almost wish that this dark universe would have started with this movie, and so much of the success of this movie rests on the shoulders of Leigh Whannell. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Leigh Whannell, well, shame on you, because this guy has been bouncing around the horror game since Saw. He was one of the writers on Saw. He has worked with James Wan for years on the Saw series, Insidious. He is one of James Wan's multiple proteges that he has. And, a couple of years ago, just more than a couple, 2015, he was given the opportunity to direct Insidious Chapter 3. And while I thought he did a really, really good job, even he has said this in interviews too, it felt like a James Wan movie still. It felt like he was using a lot of things that Wan would do, and as he said, it was a franchise. It had to sync up with what came before it. But then 2 years ago, Mr. Leigh Whannell made one of my favorite movies of the year. Super low budget, super inventive in the world of sci-fi, and he really started to establish his own kind of creative structure and way he goes about things in Upgrade. Upgrade was the upgrade that he would now needed, man. And he showed everybody that this is a dude that can crush. And he can crush with little bit of money. And when Universal went big with their budget on The Mummy and didn't get that back, when they heard we could do The Invisible Man on a super low budget, they were like, all right, let's see what you can do. And I tell you, man, what Leigh Whannell does is absolutely spectacular. He makes the Invisible Man legitimately scary because he doesn't make him invisible in the way we've seen it other times, where like it's kind of like hazy or like this kind of almost translucent liquid moving around where it's like, oh, I can see him. There's just no actor on the screen a lot of the times. Obviously there are stunt things, and I would have to imagine that they probably just put somebody in a green suit. So when Liz Moss gets thrown around a room, there actually is somebody grabbing and throwing her. I don't think it's a lot of wire work because there's a scene where her hair gets grabbed and pulled. I'm assuming, and it would make the most sense to have somebody in a CGI suit and just take them out, but completely invisible. You don't see them ever. And our Invisible Man in this movie is, of course, Oliver Jackson Cohen, who plays Adrian Griffin. And if you're unfamiliar with the story at all, Adrian Griffin, is an extremely possessive, abusive, boyfriend to Elisabeth Moss's Cecilia Cass. And what Whannell does with the Invisible Man is, one, creative and inventive. He gives us stuff that we've never seen before. But like I said, he makes him legitimately scary because he plays into the fact that, like, there's nobody there. You can't see anything. So, he'll set the camera just steady. And you'll be like, okay, wait, it's Liz Moss is over here, but most of the camera is left over here. And now you're looking over here because you're like, where's he going to come from? Where's he coming? When's he coming? You don't know because you legitimately cannot see him. And when he does come and do something like grab Liz Moss and throw her or pick up a knife or any of the things that he does, you can't see it coming because you can't see him. And it gets you legitimately frightened, and the tone of the movie is just so spot on, and it really all begins with the opening scene, which I think is a fascinating thing because I'm in the movie theater, I'm watching this opening scene, and it's spoilers, we've seen it in the trailer, but it's Liz Moss's character, Cecilia, running away and trying to get away from Adrian. It's one of the most terrifying sequences in the entire movie. It's like the tension, it's so high, you were uncomfortable the whole scene, and it sets the tone for the movie. And so much of that is credited to Liz Moss. Her performance during that stretch is mind-bogglingly good. Like, her facial expressions and the amount of things she does without having to say anything. She just shows you how legitimately scared she is of Adrian. You don't ever need to see the physical abuse that she's been in. You know it inherently, like deep down, because of the performance and the way that scene is structured. And what's interesting is Whannell said, both the studio and in test screenings, people were like, we need to see more in the opening scene. And I am so glad that Whannell stuck to his guns because it wasn't necessary. You don't need to. The scene tells you everything you need to know about Adrian and Cecilia's relationship, and everything you need to know on why Adrian is so scary. And I'm glad he stuck to his guns because I thought it worked better not seeing the physical abuse. You didn't need to see it to know it had been there and had been there for a long time. And that's so much credit to the writing, the direction, and the acting in that sequence. And that sequence, like I said, sets the tone, it sets the bar for the whole movie, man. And it's always going up. Whannell just continually is upping the ante. And like I said, the creativeness of how he decided to approach the Invisible Man, I thought was pure genius. Now, obviously, the other person to talk about in this movie is Elisabeth Moss. But before we get to her, I do want to mention that there are other people in this movie. But all of them are just okay because they're not really given a ton. Oliver Jackson Cohen does a great job of being a scary, terrifying boyfriend when he is on screen, but so much of the movie he's invisible, so you can only give him so much credit. Then you have, Harriet Dyer, who plays Cecilia's sister Emily. She's fine. Aldous Hodge, who I'm a big fan of, really quite solid in almost everything he does. Again, here is just solid, and it's because pretty much everybody that was surrounding Liz Moss just needed to be solid. We needed to have her interact with people. Same goes for like Storm Reed or Michael Dorman, or pretty much anybody that pops up in this movie. They all do a fine job, and because they're not asked to do anything more than that. This movie solely rests on the shoulders of Elisabeth Moss from the acting standpoint. And like I said, she is brilliant, man. What she does in that opening sequence, like I said, sets the tone. And it was another thing that Whannell kind of said. Like, they said, like, what did you take away? Like, there was a really close connection between him and Moss because, Whannell is obviously writing for a woman, and Moss wanted to be heavily involved, at least on set, and Whannell wanted her to be involved on set, where it's like, if we're doing things, and you think that maybe this should happen instead of this, because it would be more true to the female perspective and to your character, let's go that route. And what was nice is Whannell said, it's not so much writing for women that's difficult. You just write for a person, for a story. But it's being able to utilize the talent of the people that you have to help elevate the game. And, he said Liz Moss was amazing. And the thing that she taught him more than anything else is show, don't tell. Whannell said, I get kind of long-winded and there was a lot of exposition. And she would take a section of exposition and just show it to you through her facial expressions, to the way she emotes, to the way she is scared, to the way she tiptoes through the house or is trying to move quick. all of that is on display in that opening sequence, and you literally are on the edge of your seat. You are tense. Like, she's trying to get out, and she's looking at, like, her phone. It's got a camera on him, and it's like he's there, and you're like, oh my gosh, when? Like, because you know it's coming. You know he's going to get out. We've seen it in the trailer. And that even plays into it, because the whole time you're like, when does he start picking up on it and start chasing her? And then from that point forward, everything Moss does is just absolutely brilliant, man. Whether it's the trying to, be like, I'm not crazy. I know I'm not crazy, but everybody else is starting to think you're crazy, that you actually start to go crazy. That aspect is she's so good at that stuff, man. Like, she literally starts to look like she's losing her mind in the movie, but she knows that there's someone there, and she knows that it's Adrian, and the build up to her, finally confirming that that's what's happening and what is actually going on in the movie. From, like I said, just a physical, emoting, acting performance, she's unbelievable. And then the way they use the Invisible Man and the Invisible Man in the sequences with her or with other people, wonderful, man. Like, that dichotomy of her performance and the inventive things they do with the Invisible Man. Even though there are moments in the movie where, like, you're like, oh, I bet this will happen, or I bet this will happen. There are some things that you can see coming to a degree, right? Because we just inherently know certain things are true that the rest of the movie doesn't know, other than Moss. But what's great is they're able to surprise you, and her performance and her reaction to some of the things that happen, it's so genuine and so true that you just sit there and you literally get caught off guard sometimes. And you're like, whoa, what? That just happened? And all of it just amplifies to the fact that Whannell made the Invisible Man scary, and the Invisible Man is supposed to be scary, and I can't say anything because it would spoil, but the way they handled and the route they take for the Invisible Man was just genius. And there is a sequence in the movie that involves paint. One of my favorite moments in the film, and the way it looks, you're just like, oh, that was so good. And like, that moment, it just really kind of sums up the things they're able to do with the Invisible Man. And at the end of the day, I just sat there and I went, God, like, why couldn't we started here? If we would have started here, we might be getting an interconnected dark universe, which I think could be cool, man. Like, the Universal monster movies are fun. And even if we're not going to connect the universes together, I hope that this makes Universal go, maybe we should open the door and dive back in and find creatives that can work on low budget and make these characters shine again. Because I tell you what, man, give me all the Invisible Man movies right now. I mean, what where they get to in the movie, obviously they could do more, and I would love to see that. So there you go, man. Those are all my non-spoiler thoughts on the Invisible Man. Just sheer brilliance in the world of horror, and it just makes me so happy for Mr. Leigh Whannell, because, like I said, Upgrade was one of my favorite movies of 2018. This is immediately going to be one of my favorite movies of 2020. And I tell you, man, like, it's so good. Like, Liz Moss could totally get a nomination out of this. I don't think it'll happen because it's so early in the year, but, like, the performance, it's, you know what, it's reminiscent of Lupita Nyong'o's performance in Us. It is good enough to get a nod, but it may be too early in the year for it to last that long. But goodness me, man, this thing, if you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of these old Universal monsters, go see Invisible Man, because it's so good. There's nothing else you can say. It's just so good. I thoroughly enjoyed The Invisible Man. But now, I want to know if you did, man. It came out this weekend. Had a big weekend at the box office, took the #1 slot away from Sonic the Hedgehog, and you know, did pretty good business. I want to say it was like $27 million or something like that, you know, from an open, and this was like a sub $10 million budget. So boom, winning right out the gate, and that's the key, man. These movies, get good creatives, keep that budget low, and you can just crank these bad boys out. I mean, it's that combo with Blumhouse, man. When Blumhouse gets involved, they know how to make these low-budget movies, and it works so well. So if you were one of the people that got out to the theater this weekend, what'd you think, man? Did you enjoy it? Did you find it scary? Did it remind you of anything? I think you could tell that Whannell definitely had influence from other movies that involved invisible people, Hollow Man being one of them. You know, Hollow Man was probably the last movie I saw with an invisible character that worked really well, and I think Whannell definitely used that influence to create his own thing here that works so well. So did you see anything like that in the movie? What were you liking? What was your favorite stuff? Did you like the approach to the Invisible Man? Did you like what Whannell was doing? How great was Liz Moss? If you haven't seen the movie, are you intrigued? Did the Seaman entice you to want to see The Invisible Man? I hope I have, because like I said, if you're a horror fan, this one certainly pays off and pays off well. And it's not super long either, man. They get in and out, and it's just entertaining and scary, and it's a good time at the movie theater. So anything you're thinking, man, good or bad about Invisible Man, goes down below in the comment section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old Seaman, anytime we're talking movies or checking out trailers, or you want to you're a horror fan and you're like, hey man, horror movie Tuesday, I'm in. I liked what the Seaman's doing. I want to be ready for anything he puts out today. Well then, jump over there, man. Hit that subscribe button. Come join the Cinema Sit-Down Squad, where we have a ton of fun talking movies all the time. And then, if you really want more than me just popping up in your feed, hit that alert button, and you'll get alerts every time I drop a new video, specifically today on Horror Movie Tuesday, as we go through all the horror movie things the Seaman's been doing the last couple months. There you go, man. Do that stuff for me. I am going to keep cranking on the content, specifically the horror content today, for you guys. Until next time, for the Seaman Cinema Sit Down, I'm the Seaman. I'm signing off. Invisible Man. Well, you guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sit-Down Squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.